Hi everyone, I'm very excited to have with me two very talented artists that are working on the production of Bangsawan Gemalam Malam. Firstly, we have Eko Supriyanto, who is calling in from Indonesia, and he's the choreographer for the piece. And then we also have Ridwan Saidi, who is the playwright who was working on the translation and adaptation of the piece. So, maybe to begin, I just wanted to bring our attention to the makeup of the creative teams in SIFA this year. There's quite a lot of diversity across countries, across cultures, across backgrounds. And so I was wondering, for the both of you, how do you see this particular production as a kind of exchange for you? Where do you see the intersections of Bangsawan Gemalam Malam with your own practice? What are the resonances and the alignments? And maybe what are some ways in which you feel like the production has kind of stretched you or expanded you in new ways? And maybe Ridwan, would you like to begin first?
Okay, for Gemalam Malam, Bangsawan Gemalam Malam, because for me, I am not exposed to Shakespeare and theatre because I started doing theatre just like for the past 5 years, around 5 years, because I started as a writer first. I started writing novel, and when in school, I didn't join any theatre group, or I don't have this English literature, or where I am being exposed to Shakespeare. So basically, for Midsummer Night's Dream, this is my first contact when I read it. But before I'm doing this, I did Hamlet Fansuri, another project that I write and adapt and direct. And for that, Hamlet Fansuri, because it's a combination between Hamlet, Shakespeare, and Hamzah Fansuri, because I realized that Hamzah Fansuri and Shakespeare live at the same time frame. So somehow I think, because both of them are very profound and poetic, so I try to find ways to merge it through languages because I'm a writer. So Hamlet Fansuri is in Malay, so that is my background Yeah, more or less.
So it sounds like there was, in a way, some resonance because you've already worked on a translation and adaptation of Shakespeare before, and yet at the same time, A Midsummer Night's Dream is also new to you. And so the kind of exploration of that as a piece that you now have to digest and articulate in a more contemporary way. Could you then talk more about what were some of the research points that you went into in preparation to work on Bangsawan Gemalam?
Other than Shakespeare, but the Bangsawan itself is, how to say it, I'm after delving into theatre making, I started watching theatre shows, and I managed to catch Bangsawan and I think this one particular Bangsawan show by a university group, but it's important to me because it was consulted by Rahman Bil He's one of the pioneer in Bangsawan in, I think, in Penang. So but he's already, macam mana kata dia, dah tak ada. How to say it?
He's passed away.
Passed away. So I think that one chance to see that performance is very important to me because dia very macam mana nak kata, because when I watch it, there's this macam children and kids in front of me, and they are very engaged with the performance. So somehow I feel like macam Bangsawan dia can macam keluarkan macam kita punya audience, macam inner child dalam audience tu. Maknanya kanak-kanak gembira, dan sebagai orang dewasa, we feel macam nak kata, inner child in us, grown ups So kita macam sangat engaging dan focus with the play, something like that So I think Bangsawan is a very fun form to me from that one experience. And then historically, I managed to, in terms of research, this is accidentally, because some people say, or most popular, usually people say that Bangsawan is from Wayang Parsi and Mendu. So the more popular one is Wayang Parsi So Wayang Parsi is basically macam theatre trope macam adventurer from like maybe India or somewhere. They came to Penang and do a show, but the other aspect is Mendu lah. This Mendu thing, it's like a traditional art form from Riau maybe, or like not traditional, like macam. So I went to this macam research presentation by a lecturer at University Malaya about Mendu because I'm curious. He said that bangsawan is from Mendu and I don't know what Mendu is. So I go there and I explained like, so he presented that he goes to Pulau Natuna in Indonesia and it's in South China Sea in between because from what he said the slang there is like between Terengganu, Sarawak and Indonesia, Riau, Singapore, so because it's in the middle. So the language is like very the fusion in the middle there. And then the art form is very macam fluid. So somehow I know macam bukan asal usul lah macam, so I know bangsawan dia punya lineage of dia punya art form punya lineage is from Mendu and Wayang Parsi, especially Mendu lah. I am more exposed with the structure of Mendu, and then so more or less it gives me some insight into what is bangsawan for me lah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that you, as part of the research, were thinking a lot about the lineage of where bangsawan came from, and I think you also picked up on how bangsawan does feel like it's intended to be a very entertaining form with contemporary references that can be woven in. I was curious, could you share a bit more about specific aspects of bangsawan that you were including into the adaptation? And specifically, I'm thinking about this idea of the extra turns, right? At the beginning of your script, there is like 2 pages of notes from you as a playwright, which was very, very interesting for me to be looking through. So yeah, could you share more with us about that?
Because extra turn is one of the, macam mana kata, dia punya bangsawan punya traits, or and usually when I watch some bangsawan, ada bangsawan, the extra turn tu macam dia, macam mana nak kata, dia magic show, people singing something macam karaoke, dia very entertaining lah. The keyword is entertaining, but later I found out while adapting or writing the script, historically ada apa yang the one in Indonesia, the writer dia macam actor ke kena masuk penjara or something because dia macam, because the macam nak kata, the state power atau waktu tu lah, this macam early kurun ke-19 macam tu ke bila, I don't remember. So, and that is one example, maknanya bangsawan at one time pernah macam menyinggung kuasa, and the actor or theatre maker kena masuk penjara for 3 months macam tu. And then dia ada notes that I wrote is during macam perang waktu Jepun or something. The extra turn is macam propaganda punya element in the bangsawan is bangsawan menghiburkan, and then the extra turn is macam propaganda punya element. So what I'm trying to portray with these 2 examples is like, there's this, sometimes you can, maknanya bangsawan itself boleh engage with power lah, atau siapa yang berkuasa. And I think that is important because nowadays, because for me, myself juga rasa bangsawan, kalau sebut bangsawan, I only think about entertainment, macam dia sangat purely entertainment, tapi tak pernah terfikir dia ada layer macam tu. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that feels very important, that, you know, it's not just about entertainment or this form which is often associated with purely entertainment, actually has the space to be used in other ways, right? In this kind of like in-between scene changes space, that there could be propaganda being used, or there could be other kind of political things that are going to be there. And I think that is a big curiosity I have in terms of how the team of Bangsawan Gemala Malam are going to interpret that, which brings me to, I guess, Echo, because I think the choreography is a lot of what is filling these in between scene changes or these extra turns, right? And I'm curious about whether, you know, the prior experiences that you have had with Bangsawan and also Shakespeare, how did, you know, your experiences with both of these forms inform the way you approached the choreography for Bangsawan Gemalang Malang?
Thank you. Well, this piece is actually very challenging for me. Well, since the early 90s, actually, I was moving forward to creating a work based on the choreography and movement on dance. It's more not about how that piece it will be so narrative or, you know, based on a story. But I think the challenge that I have, and actually the trajectory that I have after that period, it was more into the imagination, and also currently it's more about how that it can be something. It can be, let's say, something about, you know, something that is going to the global discourse. So it's more universal. It's not about telling the story, but about that how that story, coming from the story, becomes some image, some space for the audience to relate it to themselves as a choreographer. So I think this piece is very challenging, and as I did not really, how do you say it, not really understand or paham in terms of the language of the Malayu language or Malay language, it's really a bit hard for me to understand, and that's also another challenge, which also for me as a choreographer, as an artist, I think that challenge for, you know, working in the art scene, it's really about that challenge and looking at more challenge that we can receive. Otherwise, you can just stay in your comfort zone. And I think that's the place and take off of my understanding and receiving this collaboration work with this beautiful and wonderful artists in this production. And also at the same time, well, I'm not also as Abang juga, I'm not really truly purely like really been working with Shakespeare or Hamlet or Hamlet, or, you know, those Western theater. Instead, I was working with a lot with Peter Sellers and Ken Seng, for example, for more on the kind of like a contemporary perspective and a contemporary adaptation. And I think this is what it takes. I think this is what I, you know, getting more excited after that. After reading this naskah, this script, it was really the takeoff of the desire and excitement of this piece is actually coming from there. The more I'm reading it, the more I feel like, wow, this is a lot of space for me to create images and imagination. And I think that's a space that I can also then really focusing on the movement, on the choreography. So I think that's really where I'm coming from to this project. And I think that's really exciting. For the last year almost, we've been back and forward on the reading on the script. And also finally, again, my schedule is very messed up. So I had my assistant actually already came to Singapore and working with the dancers. You know, it's really with 8 or 9 choreography segment that I've been working. It is about how that not only understanding the script and how the script can be transformed into the movement, the imagination of the movement, and how that can be. I still not really considering myself working on the kind of narrative way. So I took that some statement or some text that coming from this script, then creating something out of it. So I think that's what the most close energy and close trajectory that I can feel and that I can work on with this cast, beautiful cast. And I'm hoping that I'm coming back I'm coming to Singapore actually this week, this Sunday, to start working with the dancers. My assistant Rio is already making the draft of the choreography, and I just really exciting to come up with a real breath and a real sweat that coming from the dancers that is really will taking me off again higher and higher and deeper into this relationship with the cast, with the member of the cast. Also, one of the things from the script, it's, I mean, I've been traveling a lot also in Riau and in, you know, and Sumatra. That's also a lot of interpretation or adaptation from this piece. I think Bangsawan, and in Java, for example, it's really something politically, it's talking about the rule of life. You know, it's more about elite politic, for example. So I think furthermore, I can relate it to that, not only just working and understanding in terms of the Malay kind of the culture, but I think also being a Javanese / Borneo, that I was born in Borneo, my father Jayak. So I think that's kind of challenging also to see, and how that this, for example, this triangle or love scene for the cast of Theseus and Hippolyta is really can be even more wider and bigger as I am working on the movement and the choreography, and that's really exciting. And how that remembering in the past, in the early or late 90s, I've been a lot working with the artists and with my colleague from Sumatra or from Riau, from Natuna, even from Bengkalis or something like that. It's really, you know, in comparison to where I'm coming from, Bangsawan is more, you know, it's a palace, it's a blue blood. So it's like community of the elite politic that is have so much power that can do anything, you know, then it can change your life like immediately like that. So I think that's in comparison to this understanding in kind of like a imagination of the work and imagination of what I'm going to do is actually really open, and I think taking from that is really, then I feel like I can, well, as a contemporary artist, as a contemporary choreographer, I can just like really, you know, negotiating with everything that coming from this beautiful and powerful text and script and the cast of the dancers, and that's what I'm more looking forward to meet them and to start working on detail. Exactly that I'm in my work is always detail is the most important thing, and discipline, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, yeah, you know, hats off to you, Ridwan, for such a powerful and beautiful translation and adaptation of the script. I think I was really drawn by how you localized all the references really from the original Shakespearean text into something that feels very related to the Southeast Asian culture, right? And in particular, I'm thinking about, you know, with my conversation with Farid Khatlin and Safwan, we were talking about how it's so important to distinguish the different sets of characters, right? And I think, Echo, you kind of alluded to that. For Ridwan, you know, could you talk a bit about the ways in which you're translating the language and the tone for each of the, for the different sets of characters? How did you handle that?
Oh yeah, from our like earliest meeting, Kak Alin already macam jelaskan tentang there's a different set of group of people lah. So I just realized that, and how I do with the script is I use a different font. I use different font for different set of actors because how to say that, macam because it's Shakespeare, macam tadi Mas Eko ada sebut tentang susah nak faham tu, tapi itu memang struggle saya juga. Saya nak faham yang Shakespeare pun satu hal, and then I think maybe there's this Mujur ada Trisno Sumarjo pernah adaptasi ke dalam bahasa Indonesia, so I need to refer to that as well to just understand. But how I translate this piece pun, I try to macam give more macam mana kata, saya lebih beri detail pada texture dan sound dulu, more than meaning. Maknanya kefahaman, saya kena faham juga, saya sebagai author kena faham. Tapi untuk orang lain, bagi saya yang paling lebih penting adalah texture dan sound words tu dulu. Maknanya, how to say it, macam when people hear it, dia can evoke emotion without knowing it. Because when I wrote it in Malay, I think even orang Melayu pun tak faham. I think lah, Malay people don't understand I think lah, but how I approach it is through that lah. But slowly with this, macam Gemalam-Malam, I want it macam mula-mula, it's like macam ada distancing atau it feels distant lah, the language, but slowly I put in macam ada I, you, more contemporary lah. Yeah, and one more thing I want to add is that after the first reading, when listening, because when I write, because I think when doing theatre, the most important thing to me as a maybe playwright is listening the actor macam speak or cakap the words. Because to listen it is like it's a whole different thing lah. Because when you write alone, dia macam you read it in your mind, but with theatre you need to listen to other people's macam intonation or how they interpret certain words. And what I find it beautiful with the cast or Singaporean actors as a whole is because I think during the rehearsal, Kak Alin said that no baku, meaning that not formal Malay. But to me, in Singapore, I think the base, the baku base is still there. So when it's non-baku, dia ada macam dia punya traits kebakuan tu, which is something macam kalau di Malaysia, saya rasa yang baku tu dah ditinggalkan. So dia hilang dia punya sebutan yang A dah jadi E, maknanya sebutan dah jadi lain. So when I listen to these actors, I find it dia macam indah lah to me. Yeah.
And that kind of formal tone brings a different quality to the words that maybe would be different for Malaysian actors. I think the other thing that I heard was that, you know, the way words exist in text and the way words exist in the mouths of the performers is also different, right? How much did you workshop the script with the performers? I noticed that, you know, the version of the script I saw was like draft 5. What were some of the changes that you made to the script along the way, and how much of it was in conversation or in the rehearsal space together with the actors?
So in terms of process, I think it's more of a conversation with Farid, I think. Yeah. The rehearsal or macam, I think that's not very much lah, because after I've seen the readings and see the video, yeah, it's not very much with the whole group, yeah. But it's more with Farid, yeah, and how Farid interpret or yeah, something like that.
That Farid as the dramaturg is working very closely with you to shape.
And Farid at one time showed me his macam model of the stage. So that gives some impression. I realized that because in Bangsawan usually they use like T-right, the background. So in his version, it's like more, it's a different thing. So I try to, that's why because in the notes in the beginning of the play, I wrote that because when I watch Bangsawan, it tends to be episodic because the extra turn is actually, it feels more like macam TV ads or something like that because it's something different intervene the story lah, the narrative, because usually for me I think Bangsawan is more like macam bukanlah soap opera or something like macam dia just people get a glimpse of the story, but actually the overall experience is the whole thing lah. So it's not, kalau narratively it's like not that deep lah, it just macam sini lompat, but I think the expression yang dia beri as a whole nanti with lighting, with set, with movement, with sound, I think that is like yang I hope it can give a certain magic lah in it, especially it's midsummer.
Yeah. Apart from responding to the script, were there other specific things that you were adjusting from version to version of the script?
Yes. Especially I am cutting it, and I am still doing it. I will cut it because I think like I said earlier, I think in terms of writing lah, cutting, or for me lah, when cutting or editing or to cut out things is easier compared to translating and adapting lah. So I take my time like around a year or 2 years to adapt and to prepare the raw material lah, because I think after I have the material to cut it is like easy lah, macam just you can just cut it. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. And so moving on to thinking about the choreography, right? And, you know, coming back to the same point about the different sets of characters, I was wondering, Echo, if you could share a bit more about some of the movement or vocabulary qualities that you are working with for each set of the characters.
Yeah, it's also challenging at that time, that one, because the set, and I'm not really familiar yet, but I think, as Abang also mentioned about language, so I think movement also is about language. Dance is all about language also, how that language can be transformed into the dancer's body, and that the dancer's body can enjoying it more afterward, and going into the detail, and how that the movement is become not necessary as a movement, as a form, but it's about how that the dancer can projecting it as those characters that's really defining differently. So I think I'm just still following on that, since also Abang will be changing a lot, and also with the dramaturg, and I think we'll need some discussion furthermore on this, the dialogue of the language of the movement for the dancers. I think that's really important. As I understand also that the dancers is not really a dancer, it's more actors. So I think that's really even more important for me to adapt understanding from where they are coming from, and what is the background, and what will be the definition of their language into the movement. So I think that's the most important thing for me to work on this piece.
Yeah, and you have actually worked with non-dancers before in your works as well. Could you share a bit more about what that preparation process looks like in terms of working with non-dancers, and then having to, and trying to balance that, I guess, with the level of detail and nuance that is so present in your work?
Well, I always having this tendency of knowing more of them by asking them movement, asking them moving in terms of their own capability, and also maybe interest of the movement that they can share with me, with us. So I think that's most importantly. And from there, the way I work is more about how that empowering those movement, those character on the detail afterward. For example, the projection of the tempo, the projection of the expression can be the gaze, the understanding of course the musicality, and how that if it is a work like a with a group piece, with the group segment, then understanding how that is not only just one people or one actor that can be shown, but also how that's supporting each other, and how that mainly is about them. It's not about me. I mean, it's impossible for me to teach Javanese dance or a modern contemporary dance for them. So I think the way I work is more about, mostly right now for the last 11, 12 years, knowing the capability of them. Yet at the same time, if I can possibly force them to make like maybe jump like 3 meters up, for example, where they have jumping skill, but the detail of the jumping need to be higher. So how that higher, the most higher one that they can be, and that's the way I work and look it for the capability, the effort, and also the strength of the dancers. From there, I think the most vulnerable strength that they have is the most beautiful thing that I can work on.
Thanks. I really love that, this idea of, meeting the actors, the performers where they are, seeing what their strengths are, and then how to really refine and polish that so that they can express it in the fullest way possible.
Right.
And if I think about this idea of meeting people where they are, I'm also quite curious, as a last question to wrap up, how do you see Bangsawan Gemalam Malam as a production meeting the audience in perhaps your own respective countries, right? That we know that it's being created for, in a way, a Singaporean audience at this point in time. But if it does travel to different parts of Southeast Asia, different parts of the Nusantara, right? How do you think it would land for the audience there? Maybe Echo?
Oh, yeah, I think it will be another challenge to face the different cultures, audience, and expertise or experience. But I think need to be happening. I think this piece can be show something that is really about Nusantara. It's really about this, a culture that is underneath is actually expanding now, expanding to understanding that we are in the same path, that we have the same common, but yet at the same time we are different. So I think in order to represent this work in another country or another different planet, I think it's more important that it's really showing the differences and the similarity, and how that this can be open the space for the audience within their own understanding, within their own culture, that can be, because this, for me, this piece is very universal. It's not specific about Malay. It's not specific about Nusantara. It's a piece about, human being. And I think that's understanding of human being, with love, with such a power, with such a of this, political power, who's higher, who's lower, who's get the power, who got that not, and different setting, different layers of understanding of setting, and of course this is also language and musicality. I think that's really open the opportunity for expanding this work to be seen from the other place and other culture.
Yeah, I think even if I think about Shakespeare's text in itself, the themes are deeply universal, right? What you're talking about in terms of love, but also thinking about, in a way, the themes of power and politics. And, as
Sorry,
I'm hearing...
I add one more thing, but I think this piece is not about, I don't feel any Shakespeare anymore in this piece though. I feel like it's more about, it's about human being that fortunately this beautiful cast and this beautiful script is actually within inner and coming from the inside of this cast and the people who work in this work. I think let's just put it like that instead of we just keep thinking. I always like, no, this is not Shakespeare's anymore. This is Bangsawan. This is Gemalam. I think that's really more important. And yet at the same time, when we agree that can be something that we can put it on the table and let's just discuss together and let's just, mari kita nikmati bersama. Let's just eat this together, and how that then we can share how is the taste and how that need to be. And I think that's going back to the, understanding after this post-production, we need to talk and we need to discuss about how that tastes. Macam mana taste-nya, bagaimana rasanya, and are we having the similar taste or having a different taste? And I just talk. And I think nowadays in this world, it's actually those statement and those understanding is very important. Sorry.
No, it's great. I love this point that you're bringing up, that actually in Bangsawan Gemalam Malam, we don't really see as much of Shakespeare anymore. And I think that was actually what I was I was thinking about, right, that even though it started with Shakespeare, and Shakespeare's text in of itself does have universal themes, right? And I think that is a reason why his plays continue to be staged. And yet I think through Ridwan's very skillful and sensitive adaptation of it, it's also become something else completely already, that, you know, it's no longer about Shakespeare, but it is, I mean, Kak Alin spoke about, you know, her imagination of Bangsawan, of the world of Bangsawan Gemala Malam being set in a world where there was no colonization, where it was, you know, just the Malay people. And I think that was very evocative for me. And I am deeply curious as to where this production could travel to after this initial staging in Singapore. And, you know, even going back to maybe the UK, I'm curious how audiences there might also think about this particular take on Shakespeare and the way we've really seemed to make it Nusantara inspired. But yeah, Ridwan, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Mas Eko lah, because I think what makes theatre beautiful is like the people lah, when people gather, the human being lah, because as a writer, because the text is just the text lah, because when I write something, the text to me is like macam cemetery of words, but it's when there's human being, when they read it, they macam speak it, it only became alive when there's human being. So yeah, and one more thing, I think macam, how to say it, in the Bangsawan actually they don't use script, they macam improvise, they do a lot of improvisation, so it's more alive lah. They just, but because this is like macam ada scripted sikit, but what I want to say is that yeah, theatre is for people to gather, and then it depends on the cast, the different type of people sharing or breathing the same oxygen at the same space, because I don't believe in online theatre because I think people need to gather physically to breathe the same oxygen, the sweat, the whatever, it need to be alive, macam yeah, that physical togetherness. So I think in terms of art form, that what makes theatre, or maybe yeah, the gathering is yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the word that that Ridwan, you were saying when you watch that Bangsawan piece, right? Gembira, the kind of the happiness, the joy. And I think that's coming through very clearly for me about this particular production, both from the previous conversation with Farid, Alin, and Safwan, and today with the both of you, that kind of pleasure and joy of community, of being able to work on this together. And I'm very excited for Echo to be coming to Singapore and finally being able to work with the different performers. And
looking forward, yes.
yes, safe flight. And yeah, this feels like a great note on which we can wrap up today's conversation, that how do we think about coming back to the theatres in the wake of the pandemic becoming a bit more of an endemic phenomenon. And the preciousness, I think, is what comes to me, the preciousness of being able to be back in the space together with each other again. We may still have our masks on, but being able to share space and time and just that collective experience, I think, is something that I really look forward to in Bangsawan Gemala Malam and in all the other SIFA pieces. So thank you for being a part. Thank you for being a part of SIFA, and all the best for the rest of preparations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.